We'll describe it as a handle kind of twitchy, but the further you bring that back under, the more you're making it like a unicycle. You know, I mean that, and so that wheel will get tricky there.
Yeah, so like the further out you go with the tire, basically it's going to steer a little bit slower, but it's going to be a more stable ride, and vice versa. The more you bring it back towards the steering neck, it's going to decrease all those numbers, and it's going to handle better, but at the same time, it's going to want to get jerky. And
now, what springer are you using today?
It's actually a Moto Iron Springer.
Moto Iron Springer.
We've already done a little bit of work to it. The only thing we've done so far to it is we modified it, and we tacked in the headlight bar just as it's just tacked in.
Yeah.
So now that we got the front end off, well, now the front wheel off, we got the handlebars off. There's the nut on top. You're gonna take that off, and then basically what we're gonna do is there's two bolts here and here. So we're just going to loosen those up, and we kind of cheated just for time constraints. And we just got them like finger tight. So then what we have to do on this one specifically, this is an older front end, so there's an air line connecting the tubes. So unfortunately we have to disconnect. We have to take the air line off of it. And then we actually have to take off the entire cap to get the top triple off, because it's kind of like you start at the top and work your way down. So to get down to here, which is where we want to go, we still have to keep working down. So we have to pop these off. So you can grab an adjustable. I got it. Not all front ends have this. It was like an air assist back in like the early 80s. So basically you would, and I hate to say that like the suspension companies were just kind of figuring out what they wanted to do. But basically you would take a bicycle pump, because it's a gasket and it's two little air lines. And there's a nipple on one, and you put like 7 to 8 pounds of air pressure in it, because if you hooked it up to a compressor and just hit it like that, it'll go poof, and then your front end shot, and you got to rebuild it, and then you're taking it all the way back down here to replace your fork seals and stuff because of all the air pressure that just blew out.
You need a dead blow? Oh.
Yeah, the lower pinch bolts.
Oh.
So same thing on the top, where there's these two upper pinch bolts. Same thing on the bottom. On this one, it's right here and right there. So basically, that's kind of all that's really holding your front end in, as far as like the tubes and stuff.
That freaks a lot of people out. I mean, that's basically just most front ends. That's what they're held together just by the force of friction. I mean,
it's basically 4 bolts are saving your butt.
Yeah, you pinch
skidding down the road.
So you'll want to know what the exact torque is on those when you go back. I know Ben has them memorized, but he doesn't want to bore you with those.
That's all really. it's really boring stuff. Like, it's very important stuff, but it's just not. It's nothing fun to talk about.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know if you guys noticed, but as soon as he loosened the lower pinch bolt, that front fork just goes whoop right out. And just if you're doing this and you take the front fork caps off, you need to be careful, because inside of there's a spring. And down in there's a bunch of fork oil. I don't know if you guys have ever done this or messed around with fork oil. It is gross. It gets all over everything. You can't get it off.
It's with you forever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like a bad ex-girlfriend. You just can't get rid of it.
You can't get rid of it.
So put the cap back on. So now that we got it down to that point, now all you have is your triple tray. And we already took the top nut off, so we're going to do that. And on this, there's different variations of it, but on this one, there's basically like two, and for the life of me, I can't remember the correct terminology for this. But there's basically like two big nuts that are like an inch and a quarter.
Oh,
why can't I think of the word? Anyway.
It takes a spanner wrench to get them off.
Yeah, so a spanner wrench it basically looks like a big finger, and it kind of goes like that, and it's for nuts that are bigger, because on something like this, like they're aluminum to save weight. So if you grab a hold of that with a pair of channel locks or vice grips, it's going to chew it up. So you don't want to do that. So, and again, we already cheated, because we just did this the other day. Just kind of loosened it all up just for time restraints. So there's a little lock washer on there, and it has the tabs to go down, because there's always two. And what this does is when you slide that down in there, it locks it together so that it stops it from being able to vibrate itself loose. So if you're going down the road, you don't have to worry about your front end, the top nuts on your front end, becoming loose and vibrating itself off.
It's like a real thin castle nut. Chris, what are those nuts called?
Why can't I think of the word?
We can't think of the word of what these nuts are.
Why can't I think of
what
it?
What do they call
It's
it? I
bothering
don't
me.
even. I've never.
Drawing a blank too.
Is it a spanner nut? It is a spanner nut. Then
Is it?
I knew it took a spanner wrench.
Spanner nut and a spanner wrench.
I never. Yeah. So I've never really. I know what the tool's called. So now I know what the nut's called. It makes sense now.
So after you get
Stop
it,
asking me questions I don't know the answer to.
but it's not fun unless I can make you go what? So when you get it down to this far, this is trash, obviously. Because again, we cheated and we already did this for time restraints. What you're going to find is right around the base of that, there's going to be like old ball bearings. Most of the time, they're ball bearings anytime you're doing a front end swap. So just watch it, because as soon as you take this off, those little balls, if they're not greased in or like the front end hasn't been properly cared for, they're just going to go everywhere and you're never going to be able to find them.
And you don't want to throw those away, though, because those ball bearings are good if you'll have a pouch someplace on your handlebar or on your tank and somebody's behind you, like a car. You can take those ball bearings and flick them, and they'll shatter a windshield. And those people will then know, I need you to be further back.
Pat is a terrible influence. Don't listen to him.
It's a good use for a used ball bearing, though. I mean,
So that once you get it down to this point, most of the time on like these older, we were just talking about, so the ball bearings come on this. On more modern bearings, they're actually a tapered roller neck is what they're called. So they're kind of, I don't know if you guys can necessarily see that, but they kind of.
yeah, they've got a camera on you right there.
Okay, right on. So it kind of comes up like that, and there's just little roller bearings. So anytime you upgrade your steering neck bearings or any bearings in general, you need to replace the races as well. And what the race is basically I'm trying to think of the best way to describe.
Well, it's the pocket that the bearing is going to ride against. It is inverted, so and that will slip into it. So the race is where these bearings will ride, and it's a smooth surface. And the race is smooth, but if you end up dropping the bearing too, which is important, you're going to want to just go get a new bearing. And I know they're expensive, but it doesn't take anything to flatten a bearing. So yeah, the race is the pocket in which that bearing will sit.
And again, the bearing races are kind of like the manufacturer's way of letting us make sure that we don't have to like replace the steering neck. Because like what Pat was saying is that over time these get worn, just like anything else. So when it's time to replace it, basically the brace sits up inside of the frame. So instead of like be like, oh man, like my frame is shot. No, it's not, because all you have to do is, and it sucks, it's such a pain in the butt to get it out, but the bearing races, you pop them out, and one trick we like to do is, I don't know if you do it, but we take the bearing races, if we know that we're doing it the night before, we'll throw them in the freezer.
Oh yeah, it shrinks them.
Because the cold shrinks metal. So what we'll do is we'll take a blowtorch, not even, just like a little MAP gas bottle, nothing crazy, and we'll heat up the area around here, and then we'll drive out the old races, clean it up, sand it, blah, 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 grease it, whatever. And then, like, we won't even have the new races sitting there with us until we're, like, 100% ready. And then it's kind of like a massive rush, because just even being exposed to air temperature that much, there's sometimes you can actually, like, hear it almost, like, making noises.
Otherwise, you have to press races in because it's a fit. I mean, it is a snug fit. So you want to do that. And you also always want to replace races when you do bearings. That's friction on both sides. If your bearings are worn out, they've worn that race out. You put a new bearing in, that race is going to end up. It's going to end up having slop in there still. You basically haven't even improved the situation by putting a new bearing in an old race.
So now that we have it this far, and just pretend that we just swapped out the races and we prepped everything up. So at this point, what we're ready to do is we're ready to install the new Springer front end that we have. And it's literally the exact opposite of what we were just doing. So these are pretty heavy. So we're just going to lift it right up. And again, we already put the bearings on. So it's just sliding it into the new race.
This is where having a buddy, this is where a 6-pack and a pizza goes a long way.
Yeah, dude, these things are heavy. Like, I had to carry this across the parking lot yesterday, and I had to take a break halfway here, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Wait till you're my age. I get tired just watching people carry things.
What's this?
I am impressed that Ben's here because we were working on War Pony until 11 o'clock last night because this bike we started 6 shows ago is supposed to tomorrow ride off the stage. Yeah. And so it's been 90 days and 7 shows, and we'll have this bike put together. And It seemed like a great idea in Long Beach when we made that promise, but so now we're really having to kick some butt on it. But at 1:30 this morning, we got done with dinner because we got out of here so late. And Ben and Mandy and Mike are hitting me up. Hey, we just got kicked out of 2 bars. We're going to a third. You want to meet us? And I was like, as much fun as that sounds. So I'm surprised Ben's upright today.
So anyway, whatever Pat's talking about, basically once you get this bolted up, and then it's literally the exact opposite of what we just did. So we already got it bolted up, and what we need to do is that's upside down.
I was making sure that you know.
So we're fitting it on. So we already have it attached. So now what we're doing is we're attaching the top triple. It's up backwards too. And a lot of times, like with the fitment on these is so tight that what we'll do is we'll take like rubber mallets, or we call them persuaders. It's like an orange dead blow hammer, and basically
You want a dead blow?
Probably.
Yeah, I grab it.
And that's just to make sure that, like, because if you use like a normal hammer, it can dent this, and like this is chrome, and you guys know how expensive chrome is. So all we're doing is you just kind of get it tight, and you can see it trying to fight.
Right
So
here.
what we'll do is we'll just take a dead blow and kind of just like that. And then same thing. There's 2 pinch bolts on the back side of this. There's just Allen keys, and again, as Pat was saying earlier, there is torque for all this. There is torque specs. I don't remember it off the top of my head, so pretend that at this point we're like, all right, well, we're going to torque this up. And usually on something like this, it's usually around like 30 pounds, 35 pounds. It's nothing crazy, but just enough to snug it up.
One thing you don't want to do when you're on a motorcycle, even on cars, but when you're working on your bike, a lot of guys are like, oh, torque schmork, I'll just, my elbow torque, I'm just going to get it snug. The problem with doing that is you can, if you want it to be tight enough that it does its job, but you don't want to have it be so tight that you end up fatiguing the metal prematurely. You can stretch a bolt by tightening it too much, and then it's also not doing its job. And of course, my classic is I can break the head off any bolt. My dad gave me an anvil when I was 16 with a note that said, try not to break it. About a month later, I'd knocked the tip off of that sucker. I mean, I swear somebody must have dropped it off at a sky ride, but I broke an anvil when I was 16. I can break anything. But that's why torque is important, though, because particularly, really important when you're working on even covers on your motor.
Yeah.
Because if you over torque that,
And it's going to the aluminum.
yeah, you can crack cases and do all the rest. But up here, as we said, the friction is holding your front end on, so you want it to be right. So you can buy a good torque wrench if you're not going to use it every day for $75, probably 50, 75.
I'm sure Harbor Freight even has.
Yeah,
cheaper
but
ones.
just grab you a
Cheaper
torque
ones
wrench
twice.
and get familiar with it. Plus, if you have a torque wrench
Got it.
and you keep talking about a torque wrench, like I'm talking about a torque wrench, your buddies are going to assume that you're brilliant because they don't have a
what
torque
you're talking
wrench.
about, because those things are big. Like they're.
Yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah.
big
They're
and
impressive.
yeah.
You don't put that in the drawer. You hang it on
It
the
is.
wall. Because your buddies don't have one, and you'll be like, "Well, what did you torque that to?" And they won't know what you're talking about. I say, well, let me handle this. You can-
But to just go back to what Pat was just saying, so on like something like this, like you really don't have to worry. You have to worry about it, but if you over tighten it, basically it's gonna stress the bolt out, which can lead to premature failure. On going into a motor, it's way more important because basically what's going to do is instead of like steel to steel, like up on a front end or an axle or something like that, you're basically bolting into aluminum, which doesn't sound like much, but like something like this, like if you go half a click too far on a torque wrench and you're not paying attention, you can essentially strip out a hole that was made in, like, for example, this motor's an 81. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but I mean, that's, do the math, 37 years old. And you can't just go to the Napa or AutoZone and buy the replacement for that. You can with like helicoils, but then you end up with like leakage problems, and it's way easier to just do it right the first time. It's
Yep.
kind of what the old saying.
I get a lot of customer bikes in, and I'm sure you do. They say, well, my bike's leaking, and the reason it's leaking is just because stuff's not tight. I mean, you can tighten a lot of stuff up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there, it's not leaking.
That's one of my least favorite things is when we have somebody that brings a bike in, they're like, oh, well, I tried to fix it.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, and then you look at it like after the guy's gone, and there's just RTV, which is like basically like a silicone sealant. And you can see where they just like smush it in their hands and whop.
Well,
all over the bottom.
yeah.
It just didn't work.
My favorite is when they decide on case. Don't do this. JB Weld. I've had guys go around their covers with JB Weld when it's leaking and like smear it in there.
You get it?
I'm like, that's going to cost you extra just because you're stupid. I mean, come on. JB Weld has its place.
Not on a motorcycle.
Not on a motorcycle.
Maybe like if it's like
A trophy.
yes, yeah, that's appropriate. Or like if it's like a piece of like body work or something like that. But if it's your motor, don't cut corners because it's in the long run, it's going to cost you more time and it's going to cost you more money because you're going to try to have to fix.
Believe it or
Or
not,
you
when
just jacked
JB
up.
Weld sets up, it's hard. It's hard to get off.
We've used JB Weld before on like just stuff that we shouldn't be, like just blinkers. Like we had, one of our bikes is here, and we had the bar and blinkers in it. They're little itty bitty blinkers that screw into the end of the handlebars. Look really cool. The problem is that, like if your bike moves around in your trailer at all, it's smacked into the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And we went in the trailer, and the tail light or the blinker was just whoop. So we JB welded it, and somebody bumped it while it was setting. So now it's not. Instead of being straight, it's
Cattywomp.
yeah, a little bit.
you
So
go.
what Mike's doing right now is instead of as opposed to the stock front end where we just unbolted it all. Right now, what he's doing is we're installing risers on, and there's different sizes you can do. This is only a 1-inch riser, so there's 1 inch. There's different size risers depending on like what kind of application you want, depending on how high you want your handlebars to be. And there's kind of not really a wrong answer. It's just kind of whatever. It's a personal preference thing. There is like you can put clip-on bars on this if you wanted to, which is more like a sport bike, like one of those over there, or you can put like big ape hangers on it. There's not a wrong answer on it. So for these, what we're doing, and because the front end, the customer had these really cool brass
Bushes.
grips.
I didn't know where you're going. I got distracted.
These stock, they come with a 1 inch. They're set up for 1 inch bars, which are like most modern Harleys. The grips that he found that he really liked were brass, so they're 7/8. So not the worst thing, but we had to use 7/8 handlebars on this, which just means that on this there's inserts instead of there. So we're using 7/8 bars on 1 inch risers. So all we're doing, and all it is like a little half moon, and it's ridged on one side so that it grabs the bar, and those little ridges dig in, and it just doesn't let it turn at all. It's backwards. Here, drop that down a little bit. Drop the bike down. Front one.
Those of you guys that are just joining us either on Facebook Live or have wandered through, we're Grease and Gears Garage. We're custom motorcycle builders. We travel around the country and invite guys like Ben Davis and Mike from Legion Cycle Works up on stage, professional builders, to kind of demystify some tools and some processes. Today we've got Legion Cycle Works is doing a Springer swap on this 1981 XS650. And he's getting close. He's to the handlebar stage. We Facebook Live this, and so if you say, oh, that's kind of cool, I'd like to see what more kind of could happen with that, you can always go to motorcycleshows.com, the Progressive International Motorcycle Show page. You can go to YouTube, Grease and Gears Garage. You can go to Cycle Source Magazine's social media, J&P Cycles, all those, and you can find these feeds on there. So, Jackie, why don't you tell the kind folks what you got going on in the Progressive Parlor?
So here in the Progressive Parlor, we are busy hooking you up, especially if you're a Progressive policy holder. If you are a Progressive policy holder, come on over to the parlor right now and show me that policy card. I will also take an email in your phone or a quote in your phone. I'll accept that as well. Your VIP gift is waiting for you back here, friends, so come on over. 1 out of 3 of you does have a policy card in your pocket and a policy with us. We are America's largest insurance company, beating 2, 3, and 4th other companies combined. That's how we do back here at Progressive. And when you're here, get yourself signed up for your chance to win that BMW. This is the last stop of the motorcycle show. Last chance to win that bike. And I'm going to give you a free hat or t-shirt just for entering that great contest. So come on in, friends. Grab a seat and enjoy the rest of the presentation from Grease and Gears Garage. Thank you.
Talk a little bit about the War Pony. Thank you, Jackie. We got about 30 minutes, so I mean, you know, we don't have to fill all that time because I can do some War Pony stuff.
War Pony.
Go ahead and explain to them what you got going there.
So now that we have the new handlebars on, it just hit me when Jackie was speaking that one of the things we never talked about is anytime you're swapping a front end, is you need to be mindful of the steering stops, which is basically, it stops the front end from smacking itself. So on this, like, it doesn't smack the gas tank, but if we had a bigger, like, wider gas tank and we put like a set of like drawback bars, that might smack it. So basically what you have to do is you have to come in and modify, and all front ends have like some sort of stop built into it, but your frame doesn't. So like this front end is built for a Harley. The frame's built by Yamaha. So like they're not gonna coincide. So what you have to do is you have to just look at how it's built and just kind of make sure that it doesn't smack it, because you don't want to like walk across the parking lot and have it smack the gas tank, or just go too far with it and dump it. And at the same time, it's, if you ever get in trouble going on the road and you get in like speed wobbles,
Heather.
well, that'll do.
Heather.
That could potentially save your butt going down the road a little bit.
I was just looking for Chris. Is he around? Okay, we're going to have about 30 minutes, so I didn't know if any of the guys were left around, or did everybody leave? I've got Matt, but that's it. So, all right, that's fine. We can finish early. There's no law that says I can't, but taking everybody probably wasn't the best choose. I mean, I guess I can work on the bike by myself, but I don't like working by myself, Mike. I don't like it. I don't want it. I guess we could set the...
Working on bikes by yourself is kind of, it's fun, but...
I don't know. I do it all the time, and then I have people come over, and they just annoy me. So I can't ever decide if I want people around or not. So.
I always say that I want somebody to just come over and like help, but then like 3 hours later, you don't have anything done. And
yeah, you just
you're
end
better
up
off
drinking
like,
beer and
like,
talking.
Yeah, like I'd rather just turn the radio up and try to get it myself. So anytime you remove a front wheel, there's going to be spacers. There's going to be spacers. There's going to be washers, and it's really important that when you take it off, especially if you're installing the same, like if you're just replacing it, if you're doing some like front end maintenance on it. So if you're just putting it right back together, it's really important that it goes back the same way, because if you have the spacers on the wrong side, for example, like it'll push it over to one side. Your rotors might not line up with your calipers, blah, blah, blah. So one trick that we like to do is anytime we take off an axle, as soon as we take it off, we'll grab the spacers and we'll stick it back through the tire. Like if this is the left-hand spacer, we'll stick that in, we'll stick it through the tire, put the other spacer on, and then put the other nut on. So there's no question about like, oh, well, man, like, how did that go together? Because as you know, you're like, oh, man, like, you think that you'll get this front end in 20 minutes, resetting it. It sounds good until 3 months later, you're looking at it and you're like, well, crap, how does this...
Well, and invariably somebody will walk into my shop, and I don't know why people have to touch things, but, they'll pick it up and they'll hold it and everything falls apart. I take pictures a lot, particularly of spacing issues on wheels. I'll take pictures so that I can have something to reference.
Well, my kids are the worst. So there's a strict, like, when they come in the shop, like, they know that, like...
And you've got young kids. My kids are the worst, too, and they're all adults. People just like to screw with your stuff.
Which isn't a big deal until, like, you go to find that wrench that you just had in your hand, and it's gone.
All right. Yes, sir.
There
Go on.
was threads on the end of that? Okay, so when you're back on the wheel, I mean, are you really trying to be Charles Atlas on that when you tighten it up?
No, so on this one, this is a little bit different. So this is actually, there's nuts on both sides. So, like, when it gets down to there, it tightens itself down.
They stop themselves. There's no more thread, so you just tighten until you get to the end of thread.
And the same thing, like we were talking about earlier, with like torque specs. There's torque specs on everything. And again, I can't remember off the top of my head what the manufacturer.
That's
calls
not
it.
on axles. It's actually it's a misnomer on axles that you got to get them, Donkey Kong tight. You really, that's why they only put so many threads on there, so that you don't over tighten it. Because if you over tighten it, you can start pinching things, and you can actually start rolling that in. So just you're going to put that probably at about 20 foot-pounds of torque when you get done doing that. So.
Okay, somebody once told me you can tell how much pressure you have by how much it hurts your hand when you put it on.
Yeah.
And that the length of the wrench is related to your ability to put torque on it and hurt your hand. Give you some feedback on that kind of.
So the second part of that, sure. What he was just saying was that a buddy of his told him that, judging by like hand pressure, you could tell how much torque you have, and then conversely, he was also saying that the longer the wrench, the more torque you can get, that's correct. But the whole like you can get close by just feeling it, but to make sure that it's right. and
I've
you're
been
not
I've
stripping
been
it.
doing this kind of stuff since I was 13, and I've met 2 people in my life that when they tighten something and I could go back with a torque wrench and they were dead on.
Really?
I've never known. I know that's a gift. Being able to know get to that right spot, that sweet spot. That is a gift that I don't possess. I just use a torque wrench.
I'm always terrified though, because if you go half a turn too far, you can potentially cost yourself a lot of money.
Absolutely. So, all right, what's next for us, boss? You got to put the front wheel on.
Yeah. So we got it to this far, and everything's good. We have the
Thank
new
you,
races,
though.
the new races are in, the new bearings are in. So at this point, the only thing left is to smack in the new front wheel.
All righty.
So you gotta put it in like this.
You know, and we do this Grease and Gears Garage for a variety of different reasons, but again,
You know what I mean?
mostly to inspire and educate. I mean, we hope at the end of the day that it's somewhat entertaining. But whether you're riding a dirt bike, a Yamaha, a Harley, whatever you're riding, we want you to be able to make that your own and to do something to it that allows you to really feel that connection with your motorcycle. When you're working on your own bike, it deepens that relationship, you know, and it typically, well, you know, women do better, you know, with the whole emotions and sharing and stuff. So you're never going to have a deep relationship with your significant other. I'm just going to let you off the hook with that. But you can have a very deep and caring relationship with your motorcycle.
No, we're not putting it.
And part of doing that is working with it. You can't work with your spouse, but you can work with your motorcycle. I'm going to put that out. Trust me. I'm on wife number 2. I'm an expert at this.
And there's actually something like really reassuring. So like if you pull your
What's
front
that?
end off,
Maybe even closer to number 3. Of course, I'm my wife's 3rd husband,
this goes in first.
and she keeps telling me that 3's a charm, and I really like her. I can't wait to see what the next one looks like. I'm like, man, I'm down, man. You're younger and you make more money. I'm down. Introduce me.
But it is like super reassuring. Like if you're just doing this in like your garage, like you got with a 6-pack, you turn on some your radio, and to like know that you did it yourself, that's a pretty cool feeling. You know what I mean? And just like I was talking about, like it really deepens the bond. Like when you see your bike, you're like, yes,
Yeah.
that is my stuff.
If you have a bike, you want to get the service manual for it. As soon as you get a bike, whatever it is, go and get the service manual for it. You'll also, and you want that out. You can also find a lot of good information out there on the internet, but you'll want to check that from multiple sources. I unfortunately have had a lot of customers that have looked at YouTube and tried to do so. They showed me how to do this on YouTube. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true or right, as it turns out. And so if you watch one video, you might want to watch 2 or 3 more and play those against each other. It's kind of like reading scripture, regardless of what faith you're in. You're going to want to look at multiple sources to see kind of what that's telling you. But
it's kind of to touch on what Pat was just saying. It's one of those things that like the way that I do something might not necessarily be the best way, but it's how I do it, and it might not work for Pat, but Pat's way might not work for me. So it's kind of
right.
Like you could follow the guidelines, but on something like this, like there is wrong ways to do it, but like as far as like the steps that you take and the way that you do it,
It's going to be.
you don't have to. It's kind of.
And the other reason we do Grease and Gears Garage is because, like Ben was saying, he went out and found this 81 XS 650. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say XS 650. XS 650. But he bought this for around $500. You can go out and find a good deal on a bike like this. And you know, there's a lot of bikes, old Hondas and Yamahas sitting around. Throw it on a table. You don't have to have a lift. Get some 4x4s, make legs, a piece of plywood, some 2x4s, make yourself a build stand, put the bike up on there, and just start dreaming about what you're going to do to it, and just start working on it. You know, that's a great project to get you kind of familiar with tools and processes and that. Take it as far as you can, and then when you finally say, listen, I can't get the thing to start, I don't even know if the thing will run, but once you get it to that point, you can pull the motor out and take it to somebody else. But, you know, you can invest. you might not build a world-class motorcycle, but you can build something with your own hands and ride it and enjoy it, and it'll be an experience that you'll never regret.
And like that's kind of the awesome part about like these older bikes is like literally, and I'm not even making it up. One of our bikes that we just want to show with in Cincinnati, we got it for $100 and 3 cold beers at a swap meet. And that's where there's still bikes out there. You don't need to go buy $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 motorcycles. You can get these older bikes for like dirt cheap, like literally a couple beers, and put the time into it. Learn, like educate yourself on how to do like front end maintenance and like how like carburetors work and like chain maintenance, blah blah blah. And number one, you're saving yourself money because you're not getting into like a big payment of like a newer bike, but at the same time, you're also educating yourself, and it's going to make you feel more comfortable when you're going down the road. Because like me personally, like I not that I have a hard time with it, but if I just got on one of these new bikes, I'd be sketchy a little bit until you got to feel it out. You know what I mean? Because you don't know. But if you know that you did the carburetors on it, and you know that you did the brakes on it, and you know that you bled it, and you got all the air out of it,
you know it's right.
There's a feeling of confidence that you get, and at the same time, it's a pretty cool feeling when you're going down the road.
And if you got kids or grandkids, I mean, it's a great way to, to spend time with kids, grandkids, and give them some skills that otherwise they're not going to learn anyplace else. While you guys are finishing this up, I'm going to call Matt because Matt's slow. Matt, can you come up here for a second? Can you just right in the middle of screwing around with that wiring harness, can you just stop and come here?
See if that fits.
I got to get Matt a microphone. Here's a microphone. We're going to talk a little bit about the wiring on this bike.
Okay.
While they're putting that front wheel on there, I did want to talk to you a little bit about what War Pony is. War Pony is a bike that we started in Long Beach at the very first Progressive International Motorcycle Show. The Grease and Gears Garage crew has been working on this. And it's an FXR-style chassis from Paco that accepts a twin-cam dresser drivetrain. So this is a motor and transmission out of a 2003 Harley-Davidson Ultra Classic that's going to go back into this. And this bike is being set up to ride on the street, but it's Chris Callan with Cycle Source Magazine. He's kind of really getting more focused. He got more focused on having it be a bike that he could ride at Bonneville Salt Flats. And so that's why this is coming together. But one of the big boogers that nobody ever wants to address, and Ben can attest to this, is wiring. When I wire a bike, I want to have it have as few wires on it as possible. Well, this bike, that's not possible with because we've got a fuel injection system and everything.
Yeah, right. It's the other day, actually, Chris was down up my way near Morgantown, West Virginia. I had the bike down at RJ Powell's shop doing a little bit of work to it, and he asked me, he said, who can I get to build me a custom wiring harness? Well, at the time, I knew what the bike was going to be, but I wasn't sure which way he was going, and I said, well, are you carbureting this bike or fuel injection? And he said, I'm going to run the fuel injection on it. And I said, well, if it was me, I would take the stock harness and I would just gut everything out of it that it doesn't need. And he said, okay, I'll bring it to DC and you can do that. So I'm over here on the table with 5 or 6 different wiring harnesses because I have a couple that I've been salvaging parts out of, getting wire and everything. And as I said, this was a 2003 Electra Glide. So radio, every gauge you can imagine, heated this, whatever. All this stuff was in the wiring harness. So currently, right now, if I put a jumper wire on it, we could run this bike with this wiring harness right here. If I just jumped it and powered up the fuel injection.
That makes me
that's what's actually required to run a fuel injected bike right there. So on the rest of it, though, we still need hand controls. It is going to be a street bike from time to time until one of us gets in trouble and Heather takes it away from us. But so it needs headlights, speedometer, tail light, brake light, things of that nature. So over on the table over there now, I've got the main harness off of the Pearl, Chris's old Electra Glide. I'm slowly whittling away at it, getting everything stripped out of it that we don't need so that I can then tie it into this harness and we'll be ready to go.
And how do you know what to pull out and what not to? Do you just it just magically comes to you when you touch that wire. You just know this red wire with a purple stripe needs to be gone.
Yeah. I just, if it
what I thought.
doesn't look like something I thought I ought to be on there. No, luckily, when Chris pulled it out of the bike, Harley is very good about this. For the most part, no two connectors are the same. They're different somehow in size or something like that. But when Chris pulled it out of the Pearl, he went ahead and he labeled everything for me. So if there's something there, a connector that I'm not familiar with, not a big deal. He's already got it labeled. But things are simple. Neutral safety switch or neutral light doesn't have any idiot lights on it, so I can pull that out.
So if you are going to get into disassembling your bike, doing something custom and reassembling it, when you pull the wiring harness off, get your service manual out, and every time you unplug something, take a piece of tape. It can just be painter's tape, masking tape, write on there what it is, and then just loop it around and stick it to it. That way you know that that's going to go back there. So you can also, and usually in a service manual will have it, Chris actually got you a nice great
Yes, I have a nice big wiring schematic over there.
Yeah, it's on a spiral bound thing. It's this big. So, there are schematics out there. For some reason, when you're pulling it apart, you get confused. All of the wires are different colors, and so most manufacturers are really good about that. The older bikes, sometimes you'll run into a little bit of a problem because the wires will be all the same.
Yeah, somebody's replaced it with all red wires or something like that.
Yeah, so
most all service manuals have wiring schematics in the back of them. You can get your information from there. As you get into the bigger bikes, as the electric lights and stuff, it's going to be 2 or 3 pages of wiring.
So don't let wiring scare you. It's just something that you just got to take time with. And worst case scenario, your bike will never run again.
What's that?
I think he said 5. I think he's. Well, it was nice when he showed up in D.C. When we showed up in D.C., Chris Callan, this is his bike, he had a garbage bag full of wiring harnesses.
The garbage bag was just the wiring harness out of the Pearl.
Oh, was it?
The big box was all the extra wiring.
I was wondering how he got so many wiring harnesses.
Pearl's wiring harness actually took a garbage bag to get.
And it's funny, we've all been working on this bike, but he's the only one with dirty hands.
Yeah.
Apparently, Chris also never washed his bike.
This is what my hands look like.
That's right. So, well, Matt, we appreciate it. And we really thank you for wiring that up.
Okay.
So
it gave me a while for my eyes to uncross there.
There you go. All right, get back to work, Chris. Get back to your table. He's our little wiring hobbit. So I was giving him a hard time yesterday just about everything in general. And Chris finally said, hey, don't screw with him. He's wiring the bike. This bike is going to run tomorrow. That's the goal. We started building this bike, War Pony, 6 shows ago. Tomorrow, this bike will start up and be able to be rolled off stage.
Ridden
off stage. Or we will sit on it and push it off stage and make brum, 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 brum noises. But our commitment has been that we're going to have this bike built. So, all right, where are we at, Ben?
So we're done.
Okay.
So super easy, and this is something that for your first time, it should only take, I don't know, 2 hours maybe.
Yeah.
It's not like a super labor-intensive thing. It's something that you can do with a very minimal amount of tools. The hardest part is just securely getting the bike lifted up so that you can drop the front end. But and again, like Pat was talking about with the manuals, it's really important to make sure that you have the manual for whatever bike that you're working on.
Yeah.
Because of the specs, the torque, and it'll even show you the spacing on your front wheel bushings and the spacers. It'll show you this one goes there, blah blah blah, and it'll show you step by step on how to do that. So you're not going in blind, and you're not tuning into YouTube like Pat was saying and just watching
random guys.
Yeah, like Joe Schmo who had a 6-pack and decided to make a YouTube video, and you're not putting your faith in those guys.
So, this is an opportunity. If you've just joined us on Facebook Live or here, we've just swapped out with Legion Cycle Works here on the Grease and Gears Garage stage. We've swapped out a stock front end for a Springer front end. But in that, even if you're not swapping it out, you can go back and look at Grease and Gears Garage on YouTube, or JMP Cycles carries this as well. MotorcycleShows.com for Progressive International Motorcycle Shows. You can go back and you can look at this, and you'll you'll have a sense of what it would take to replace your races and bearings as a maintenance item, what it would take to kind of take your front forks off and be able to service those and that kind of stuff. So, Ben, I appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you being with Grease and Gears Garage today. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to hit us up. And we will be back. Check the boards for the times when Grease and Gears Garage is back. And make sure that you drop in and keep up on War Pony. It's going to be interesting to see if we actually get that thing together and riding off the stage tomorrow. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, Ben. Thanks, Mike.